The biblical story of Elisha, the prophet of miracles and faithfulness. Elisha is one of the most fascinating figures of the Old Testament. He was God's prophet, whose life and ministry were marked by an astonishing series of miracles, demonstrations of divine power, and God's unwavering faithfulness to his people. As the successor of Prophet Elijah, Elisha received a double portion of his mentor's spirit and became a central figure in Israel's history, especially in the northern kingdom. This video explores Elisha's biblical narrative, highlighting his calling, his influence on both political and spiritual life, and the spiritual lessons his life offers. We also reflect on the historical context, the significance of his ministry, and its relevance to today's world. Elisha's calling. Elisha's success. Elisha's story begins in 1 Kings 19, when Elisha, after facing great challenges and spiritual crises, was commanded by God to anoint Elisha as his successor. Elisha was plowing fields when Elijah found him. He was working with 12 yoke of oxen, when Elijah threw his cloak over him, a prophetic sign of ministry transfer. So Elijah passed on, and Elijah was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him. And Elijah passed over to him and threw his cloak upon him. 1 Kings 19:19. Upon receiving the call, Elisha immediately left everything, even his oxen too. That act symbolizes total surrender and obedience to God, a defining trait of his ministry. Historical context of Elisha's ministry. Elisha prophesied mainly during the reigns of many kings of Israel's northern kingdom, including Ahaziah, Joram, Jehu, Joash, and others. It was a time of political instability, conflicts with neighboring nations like Syria, and spiritual decay, marked by widespread idolatry. Still, Elisha was a beacon of hope, showing that God remained active among his people. His ministry revealed divine power through miracles and guidance that decisively affected Israel's destiny. Notable miracles of Elisha. He is best known for many miracles recorded in 2 Kings. These were not only spectacular events, but clear signs of God's sovereignty, compassion, and care. The widow's oil miracle, one of Elisha's earliest miracles, showed his compassion for the needy. A widow, whose son was about to be sold into slavery to pay debts, sought his help. Elisha instructed her to collect empty jars and pour her little oil, which miraculously kept flowing until all were filled. This miracle demonstrates that God supplies needs and watches, especially over the vulnerable. Go borrow vessels for yourself from all your neighbors. Empty vessels do not gather, just a few. Then go in and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all those vessels. 2 Kings 4:2-3-4. The healing of the Shunammite's son. Elisha also resurrected the Shunammite woman's son, who had provided him hospitality. When the child died, the prophet prayed, and the boy returned to life, showing divine authority over death. Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, please let this child's life come into him again." 2 Kings 4:32. Purifying the water of Jericho. When Jericho suffered from contaminated water causing death and infertility of the land, Elisha threw salt into the spring, and the waters were purified, demonstrating God's provision for health and well-being. Then he said, "Take a new jar and put salt in it." And they took it, and he went out to the spring of water and threw salt in it. 2 Kings 2:21. Multiplying the barley loaves. On another occasion, Elisha fed 100 men with 20 barley loaves, and some ears of grain and leftover servings. This prefigured New Testament multiplication miracles and showed God's ability to provide even with limited resources. Then he said, "Give it to the men, that they may eat." 2 Kings 4:43. Healing Naaman the Syrian. One of the most famous episodes is Elisha curing Naaman, a Syrian general with leprosy. Though Naaman expected a grand treatment, Elisha simply told him to bathe in the Jordan 7 times. Naaman initially resisted, but when he obeyed, he was healed, demonstrating Elisha's spiritual authority and God's sovereignty over nations. Go and wash 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored to you. 2 Kings 5:10. Blinding the Syrian army. During a military crisis, Elisha prayed that God would blind the Syrian troops besieging Dothan, protecting Israel. Later, he prayed for their sight to be restored, showing divine mercy and control over all events. Then, Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. 2 Kings 6:17. The floating axe head. Another curious miracle occurred when an iron axe head fell into the water. Elisha made it float, allowing it to be recovered, demonstrating that God cares for life's small details. But the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" He cut off a stick and threw it in there, and made the iron float. 2 Kings 6:6. Elisha's political influence beyond miracles. Elisha played a key role in Israel's politics. He was consulted by kings and advised on military and strategic decisions. For example, he guided King Joash on defeating the Syrians. Though the king initially succeeded, Elisha later rebuked his lack of perseverance, teaching that full victory depends on faith and obedience. Then he said, "Use the arrows," and he struck the ground 7 times. 2 Kings 13:17. This shows Elisha's dual role, prophetic and practical advisor, in political and military matters. Elisha's faithfulness to God and to Israel. A defining feature of Elisha's life is his unwavering faithfulness to God and his people. He sought no fame or wealth, but devoted himself fully to carrying out God's will. His life teaches perseverance, obedience, and trusting God, even amid hardship. His loyalty to Elijah through service and succession also highlights continuity and respect in prophecy. Spiritual lessons from Elisha. The power of obedience. Elisha shows us that obeying God is essential to experiencing his power and blessing. He obeyed without hesitation when Elijah laid the cloak, or when asked to perform miracles. The importance of compassion. Many of Elisha's miracles were for the needy, widows, sick, and poor, revealing God's compassionate heart and our duty to care for the vulnerable. God's sovereignty over nations. Elisha's ministry proves that God is master of all peoples. Healing omen shows God's grace extends beyond Israel. Faith as the key to miracle. Elisha often asked people to act in faith. Naaman's healing required obedience and trust in God. If Elisha's story inspired you, share this video with someone who needs to know it. Hit the bell, subscribe, and like the video. See you in the next video with more inspiring stories.